right, and welcome to Between Two Feathers, a not too serious interview series talking about some pretty important stuff. I'm Stacey Geddes, Manager of Support, and with me today we have Bryan Chapman, Manager of Customer Success.
Hello, hello.
So this time here, we're going to review a few things. If you can flip over to the agenda there for me, Bryan. So we're going to review things here for you guys. We're going to take a peek back at some September and October, what we've been up to here at Gradient. We'll have a quick peek at some partner sentiments, what this turnkey implementation is. We'll talk about POC Talk, some of the bugs that we've encountered over the last, 30, 60 days and just what we've done to rectify those. Some new integrations that are coming out, some pretty exciting stuff. New features we've dropped, some that are coming, some that are already here. And then we'll take a little peek under the feathers and see what's coming, here to round out the rest of the year. So let's take a look. What are some of our partners having to say about us, Bryan?
Yeah, a couple of quotes that are coming down the pipeline. Yeah, really great to hear that we're cutting down the amount of time that it takes to reconcile. And this is really where the biggest return on investment is when it comes to our billing module. When it comes down to finding those discrepancies or money left on the table, potentially, those are really truly just cherries on top. Having automation with oversight and being able to cut down monthly billing reconciliation down from what was 6 days to just really only 4 hours a month for IT Solutions of South Florida was truly fantastic to hear. And then from VXIT, Libby mentioned that, absolutely thrilled with the product and service we've gotten so far. So it's just a real testament to everyone at Gradient, coming down from our product and engineering team to sales to support success. Like, everyone truly cares, and it shows in our commitment to our partners and the fact that we're able to deliver and also listen to critical feedback and turn around on these things really quickly. So yeah, some really awesome sentiments coming down the pipe from our partners, and this is just a couple of that. So really exciting to hear.
Nice. Speaking of, partners and sentiments and thinking of things in the word turn, I'm sure you said it. What about turnkey implementation? As
Yes.
listening to feedback and getting started on some of this, some MSPs are in different stages and different situations. And why don't you take a minute and talk about this new adventure?
Yeah, this is definitely a new journey, and in many of our interactions with MSPs, we found that regardless of their maturity as to whether or not they're small, big, or wherever they are along their journey, we found that there was a number of them needing more time and resources. I just needed time to implement, and they just may or may not have had that time or resources to do so. So we've thrown in this turnkey implementation where the scope of work is pretty straightforward. We are going to set up all direct vendor integrations, CSV import profile setup. We're going to have that hands-on training, and we're going to be able to, hand over that torch, so to speak, when it comes down to, success is going at Gradient is going to set up everything for you and then hand that over to you and really go through that first initial billing cycle and then provide recommendations report. So if we see anything in particular, whether it be your agreement setup, whether it be standardization of your product catalog or just other nuances that go on with PSAs, like for example, ConnectWise manage and taking advantage of invoice groupings to breaking out cost of goods sold for greater auditing and compliance. These are all recommendations that come out of this turnkey implementation. So we're not necessarily touching your PSA by any means, and again, we want to be very certain of that. But this is just very much setting up your integrations within. Synthesize, so that way we can then hand that off to your billing team or yourself, whomever is responsible for reconciliation. And really, the outcome of this is really straightforward: faster time to value. We talk about return on investment a lot, and we just heard some sentiments in that. Depending on how many customers you have, agreements, and where you're currently at, we want to make sure that you see value within that first 30, 60 days. And this really expedites that, because we're the billing experts and we know our product and these PSAs like the back of our hand. So we can really move quick.
So Bryan, just as
Yeah.
you're mentioning that, if someone was listening to this and going, "Man, that's the piece I was missing or what I need," how do they engage in that conversation with us?
Yeah, honestly, when you book a demo with us, just make sure that you talk with one of our sales representatives and get that conversation going. And if you are already a partner of ours, just reach out to your success manager, reach out to your account manager, whomever. We can have those conversations. So, these turnkey implementations, these plans range between 500 to $2,000, depending on which tier you're in. So obviously, if you don't already know, we have tiers when it comes to our billing module, and it depends on the amount of accounts that have at least one active agreement. So really just looking at your managed clients. And so really affordable, inexpensive ways to make sure that you're getting the most out of Synthesize. So relatively inexpensive to what you're going to get in return. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing more of these come down the pipeline, just because I love getting my hands on these things so we can then, there's some times where I just give me control. I want to do it all for you. And this is opening the door for me to do that. So, or our success team rather. So yeah, looking forward to it.
That sounds so exciting, and I'm sure our partners very much appreciate it as well. So
Yeah.
on that note, let's talk about feedback and how things like turnkey implementation come to fruition, and that is through our partners' feedback. So Flock Talk, for those that are maybe new around here, is our feedback portal. It's available to you in app. So anytime you're in the app, if you're at a page or something isn't making sense, you want to give us feedback, click on Phil, and submit it in. You can also put feedback through any other number of ways to our team. Bryan, myself, any one of your success managers, we will all receive it and put it in the same place. But I just wanted to highlight that a lot of these things that Bryan's talked about or will talk about later in this webinar are all directly related to feedback, whether it's coming from the portal here or we've put it in on your behalf. So Block Talk
Yeah.
is here, and we truly do. The good, the bad, the ugly, we really peek under those feathers and consistently realign and make sure that we're on the right flight path, for all the puns I can put in here, to really make sure that, we are targeting what everyone is needing here for that
Yeah.
reconciliation, so.
Yeah, there. I mean, I feel like a broken record. We almost talk about this exclusively, like talking about feedback and whatnot. This is still very much a new market, and so when it comes down to it, billing specifically, if we were just to hone in on a billing module, this could take 1,000 different directions. And, there's no question every MSP, PSA, MSP vendor bills differently. And there's all of these other nuances within billing methodologies and consumption billing and so on and so forth. So there's just so much that goes into a product like ours, and we really value feedback. And there's a reason why we don't have a public roadmap to begin with, because things could be changed on a dime. So like if you're not entering it within our feedback portal, reach out to one of us at Gradient. We want to hear it, because ultimately we're your biggest advocates, and we want to make sure our platform sings and dances, and
And
really
vote.
fits your billing requirements. So
You're in
yeah,
there and you see something another MSP has put in there, and you're like, yeah, I want that. Please vote. Add the weight. Show us the
add the
other
weight.
items.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's just it. All right.
Awesome.
Well, enough of
So
that.
let's take
Buck
a look at
squashed.
that. Yeah. So once we've got the feedback, hey guys, the feedback might be something wasn't quite working. Let's review some of the bugs that have come through and been kind of corrected here in the last. I'm going to say this is about a 60-day recap. I'm
Mhm.
reviewing for you guys, the back end, all of September and, the good 2/3 here of October when we're taking a peek through these. So we did have an issue with the card view where if there happened to be a vendor that everything had already reconciled, we would leave the row open with nothing to view. And it was quite a spacious eyesore. That has been rectified. So if there is nothing to show, it just show the row collapsed. Similar on a visual issue there with the list view, we did have no change cards that would show a value of 0 where that space should have been empty. So it was a little bit confusing that we were showing a value to update of 0 when there was nothing to update. So confusing, obviously, but great to have that one corrected. In list view, we did have an issue where any value over 1,000 in profit and revenue would display a null results. And of course, we did get that corrected as well because money and profit are wonderful things. We did disable newfound revenue feature for anyone who is using many-to-one service mapping. And maybe, Bryan, if you want to take a quick second and highlight sort of the logic behind that. But that is so that when we are using those many-to-ones, there aren't unnecessary newfound revenue cards being added. And we do have some plans in the future to more gingerly address that.
Yeah. Newfound revenue, it's one of those things where it's one of our big features in being able to identify potentially unbilled revenue. And what we found though is that we need to give newfound revenue extra TLC just to make sure that this doesn't overcomplicate things to the point where, especially when it comes to multi mapping. So let's say, for instance, you resell tiered services. You have like a gold, silver, bronze, service bundle or package, and so this is where you're likely using your RMM or a user count to reconcile those services. So you could have potentially one of 3 assigned to your client. So you essentially want to map all 3 of those products or services from your PSA to that single count, that RMM or user count. And so what would happen prior to this change is that we would create an erroneous amount of newfound revenue cards, and they would essentially be quote unquote false positives. And so with that said, and various other reasons that I won't delve into, we just decided to disable newfound revenue on many-to-one service mappings, so you didn't get bombarded with all these newfound revenue cards. And so with that said, we spent hours talking about these next steps on how we can improve this overall. So like Stacey mentioned, we have some really exciting things on the horizon, nothing of which we can share today because we're still mocking up some designs, but it's looking absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to share what we have coming down the road with newfound revenue and recommendations, wink wink. So lots happening there.
Thank you. That was a wonderful way to summarize that. Jumping right along with the newfound revenue, we did have an issue where for some PSAs, you were not able to actually see the contract when assigning a newfound revenue card. If there was only one contract it could go to, it just kind of showed you a blank space and you had to trust that we were putting it there. That was corrected quite quickly. 504 on bulk approve. This had to do with the timing. When you would do a multi-select or you would approve some cards, they would still be visual on the screen for 3 or 4 seconds before they had actually processed. During those 3 or 4 seconds, it did enable, or if you were a quick clicker, an option to try and process them essentially twice, which would give us these issues. So that has been corrected. And then some users were prompted to upgrade. And when I say a paywall, they went to log in and were actually met with, hey, upgrade to Pro, even though they were Pro. So that was, of course, rectified quickly. Unable to filter by contract name was an issue that did come out when contracts, had been, updated or new information. There was a period of time where the filter was not working. And then newfound revenue did duplicate on some cards. And that was, of course, also cleared out for you. If you want to continue on to the next slide there for me, Bryan, I'll talk about some, integration specific bug fixes that did come out over the last, 60 days or so. So with Auvik, we did have an issue where total billable devices were not pulling in correctly. And this had to do with what we were pulling in from their, back end. So servers and workstations necessarily should not have been on there. So that has been corrected. Sentinel-1 authentication appears to pass and fail. So that was a couple of, essentially if your API was set up most of the way there, but was missing a permission, normally we would fail that and give you an appropriate error. But in this case, we'd pass the authentication and then fail further down the line. It was not a great experience. So that has been corrected to either pass or fail at the moment of authentication. For Sophos Central, it was not pulling in all accounts correctly. That was something that we needed to correct in the back end that has been done. For LionGuard, I sort of summed this up. We have a couple of small improvements that did go in over the last 60 days. It's a very big or robust integration that we have. There's many, many different moving pieces. But there was a point that it would connect, but it didn't necessarily show all of the values or counts. And this also was due to some back off requests. So due to the sheer amount of data that was coming in for certain requests, we did hit some timeouts. So we took that back to our engineering team who put their, brains together and built up and did some back off and request fixes, which have greatly improved a lot of the syncing and the values and the load times for that integration. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Bryan, or is that pretty well summed that up?
Yeah, it's summed up good. Like honestly, LionGuard is massive and we're returning so much data. And so this is where we made some improvements to that sync, but we'll continue to enhance that sync altogether. There are some plans in the works as to how we can go about that, but right now everything should be syncing really nicely. We're just trying our best to reduce that time to sync overall. So expect to see some improvements here and there in the back end. Not so pretty enhancements as far as like the front end user interface. It's all just LionGuard syncs all together in the back end. So just trying to improve that overall, so you're not having to wait potentially 5 to 15 minutes depending on the amount of data we're retrieving from them. So or how many environments or custom metrics that you have mapped. So lots of back-end improvements coming down always when it comes to LionGuard, it seems, just because of the sheer amount of data that we're pulling in. So
well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Speaking of sheer amounts of data and other large integrations, so working in with Pax8, we did have an issue with not all services pulling in or displaying, and that had to do with legacy issues and how they are displayed in the product catalog. When issues such as that arise, or if they do arise, just make sure you do reach out to our support team, and we can support you through if something has been grandfathered out of their catalog or not appearing in. But we do have some fixes in place to make sure we are adequately finding those should they have dropped from your product line.
Yeah, another thing to mention there too is that, and it's not a knock on Pax8, but it's one of those situations where, there's some things that you just find out by using integrations that you wouldn't have otherwise known if just by looking at API documentation or anything like that. So, one thing that we recently found out that I'm happy to share is like, there are things within the Pax8 product catalog through their API that although there's a subscription, it's not listed in their product catalog. So it's like one of those things that we wouldn't have even thought of happening yet, just through troubleshooting and working through these bugs with partners, we're able to resolve these things. So like more enhancements coming with Pax8, or maybe not enhancements, but just rather like bug fixes coming down to you with Pax8. And this just is a big shout out to our partners and being able to work with us on these things. And so Yeah,
Isolating it
it's just
down, narrowing it down was fantastic.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it just goes to show that you know vendors in themselves, there's no standard approach to these things, and some of these things come through troubleshooting and really investigating, honing in on these bugs and fixing them accordingly. So props to all the partners that are working with us on this Pax8 integration, because it continues to evolve over time. So
Brilliant. So on the topic of bug fixes, if you want to go to the next slide for me, we'll talk about hot fixes. So, sometimes when a bug comes across the table that is impactful to, large, sections, if it impacts the whole site, if it's something that, needs to be done outside of a regular release, we will do that, and always highlight or call out when we do that and why. So we did have 3 hot fixes that should be mentioned here. So as I mentioned on the AUVIC, where we were not pulling in the correct billable devices, as soon as that one was isolated, narrowed down, that was pushed directly out to production. And then we did have a hot fix for our weekly syncs. So this, what that is about there is for our integrations. When you log in, as you guys are aware, your syncs have always been updated within the last, week or so. There was a period of time where they were updating or showing a last updated date greater than 7 days. And that was due to these weekly syncs not running on a regular cadence as expected. So we did hotfix to make sure they were all running and keeping updated. And then I wanted to mention a hotfix we put out for Kaseya and Pulseway. This one did not affect any partners, but we wanted to highlight that we made a change mid-cycle due to another change unrelated to those PSAs, but would affect how those cards were viewed. And this has to do with when you are displaying a card that has a no value. For those specific PSAs, they require us to show a value, so we had to do a change that just shows a 0 value in the system. So again, just in transparency, whenever we make any change mid-cycle, we put that there. So again, not partner facing. It was a change in our back end and how we actually run the business of those service cards that affected these 2 PSAs. And we updated that mid-cycle to prevent any confusion or issues. So with that done, looking at all the bugs and the fixes and great things, look what's new, what's kind of come out onto the platform there in that period of time and whatnot. So one of the newest integrations kind of quietly out on the platform. And by the time the webinar here comes out, maybe more publicly known, but we've got Coro, cybersecurity joining the platform. It is there now to connect and have a peek through for your billing needs. And we've also got Keeper Security and Fort Mesa down the line here as well, who've recently joined the platform. Brian, I don't know if you've got anything you want to add on any of those vendors that have joined the platform here with us, or...
Yeah, so Coro is a dual integration with our alerts and billing module. So if billing doesn't tickle your fancy, maybe alerts does. And so that might be something that you want to check out. Keeper is great to see come aboard. Lots of MSPs resell password managers, as we know. And one of the biggest pain points is reconciliation and making sure that you get paid for everything that you do. And it's one of those things that it's like death by a thousand cuts. If you're not reconciling your password manager, albeit it's only like a couple of bucks per user, that could translate into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of revenue, right? So you want to keep tabs on those. And let's face it, those things are fairly volatile. So, you want to make sure you're keeping tabs on that. And then lastly, Fort Mesa, it just goes to show that you just want to make sure that you're billing for everything that you do. So just adding new integrations to our portfolio. And, there's more coming down the queue, which we'll talk about shortly here.
Speaking of billing or reconciling for everything you do, why don't you take a peek at some new features for us there, Brian, that might help us accomplish that?
Sure. All right. So first off, this is just a visual indicator of multi-map services, effectively just indicating how many products did you map to that service. And this is just regarding many to one service mappings. So again, you have a tick if you have a one-to-one mapping association. And this, again, this doesn't affect newfound revenue. So one-to-one mappings will still show newfound revenue. And for those many S01 surface mappings, this is where you're going to see indicators such as, the 2 to 9 mappings. If you have up to 9 or more mappings, that's where you're going to see the other icon there. Again, this is just goes to show that we don't often see more than 10 mappings for a particular service, but in any case, if you hover your cursor over these service mappings, you're going to see the PSA values that they're mapped to, and coming very shortly here, we're going to actually show on the actual integration configuration your mappings, so that way you don't have to drill into update service mappings on the integration configuration and all that stuff. So lots of quality of life improvements that are coming down the pipeline, including this, which we're happy to, just little things, little tweaks in here and there that will hopefully make your life easier when it comes to service mapping and all this good stuff. So yeah,
the visual changes, right? At a glance, it kind of shows you what you need to know.
Just overall maturity of our product, really. Now, PSA vendor last sync date. Now, last between two feathers, we mentioned that we were including the PSA vendor tag, which is where you see that plug and the PSA value on the left and whatnot. So just further to that, we, with our sync improvements that are rolling out, we've added this before much earlier than we anticipated, but we're now including the last synced PSA and vendor dates. So again, this is just quality of life improvements and just a visual reminder as to when those kicked off last, because there was just some general confusion as to when my PSA or when my vendor sync or last synced rather. So again, just visual indicators there. And again, if you see anything out of whack and you're like, you see your vendor sync as of like 14 days ago, that might be an indicator as to there's something being wrong with either the API credentials or something out of whack entirely. So again, you just want to make sure that you're kind of reviewing those as you go through your reconciliation cycle. And we're all about just increasing your click confidence, so that when you go to approve these updates, you're not second guessing things and flip flopping between your vendor and PSA. So yeah,
fantastic. So moving on from then, list view.
Yeah, this is a not so great news. Lots of people loved list view and the ability to group by account, service, contract. Now, we have temporarily disabled this group by feature in the list view. Why? Because we preemptively found some issues through our regression testing, and we're like, holy cow, we need to hold back, and we just put this behind a feature flag for now. So unfortunately, this is temporarily disabled until we fix this. It all came down to selections and selections with groups. Now, the list view, as of right now, there's no issue. It just was surrounding the group by feature. So again, we removed that temporarily until we can get this fixed. I can expect this going to be back. I can't put an ETA on this just yet, but we're trying our best to get this back, because we know that many of you do reconcile on an account or contract level basis, so that way you can at a glance see everything that makes up that particular contract or account, and you can like do select alls and all that stuff. So just a heads up, if you don't see that and you're furious, then we get it. It's coming soon. We're going to fix it. But we wanted to make sure that we didn't cause any disruption to your invoice cycles or cause any confusion on that front. So that's why we just chose to disable it for the time being. So
Bryan, in like 30 seconds or less, can you give me a roadmap sneak peek? Just
30 seconds or less. Okay.
Yeah.
We talked about this last between two feathers. There are major sync improvements now. I know we've been saying this for a while, but we've been so adamant on testing and making sure that we go through the proper quality assurance. So that being said, this is going to come out very soon. In fact, this week we're rolling this out to beta partners. They're going to get the first go at this, and we expect to have this rolled out very, very soon. This is major sync improvements, everything from that sync status bar to show you syncs in progress, previous syncs when the data is up to date, etc. We're going to have that readily available, as well as like when you go to log in, we're going to initiate a PSA and vendor syncs. So lots of things in behind the scenes that will overall, again, increase your click confidence so you can trust in the data that we're putting out there for you to approve. So this will, as of right now, will only affect Autotask and ConnectWise managed users, just an FYI, and then other PSAs will come thereafter. So lots of sync improvements, which I'm really excited about. Anything to add there, Stacey?
Well, no, I think you've covered it well. It's going to come soon. ConnectWise and Autotask are first out of the gate. Mm-hmm. We're going to get more at the gate, shortly thereafter. And this is directly on feedback. Let's get the data in front of you. Let's have what's syncing clear and concise. And if there's an issue, let's put it in front of your face so you can reconcile with exact confidence. And
one thing like to add here is like it's going to be asynchronous, and I really like that word, asynchronous. This is going to happen by when you log in, and we're gonna reduce those refreshes in your browser. We're actually going to be updating those service cards or the rows in that list view automatically, so you're not having to refresh your screen constantly. They're going to be asynchronous. They're just going to happen on demand. So really looking forward to that. So
beautiful. Well, Bryan, to sort of wrap up today, why don't we take a quick peek at what's coming down the line? Who's building, or what are we building with here in the next little bit? So we've got Malwarebytes. They're going to be dropping here imminently in the next, short little while. We've got Datto building down the line, Ingram, DNS. Lots of exciting things coming down the line. Anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, honestly, it just comes down to quality assurance and making sure that we're testing, and we put a big emphasis on this. I know we had a big push. We more than doubled our integration portfolio, and you know what, the last since leg up, so what, 2 or 3 months ago. But even since then, we've been punching out integrations. But again, really big emphasis on quality assurance. But with that said, I know we talked about these last between two feathers. But again, we just want to remind you that Malwarebytes is coming. Datto, we're refactoring that Datto continuity integration to break out by device model. DNS filter is coming very, very soon. We were just waiting for some endpoints from their team just to make that happen. Now that is, like now in our hands, we can really turn around on this really quick. The Ingram Micro, the Sure Web integrations, they're coming very soon. They had big dependencies on the sync improvements that we were rolling out. So now that we're nearing the end of that sprint with those sync improvements, we're going to see even more of these integrations coming down the pipeline. I can talk about other integrations, including Barracuda and maybe a SonicWall coming down the pipeline. I don't know if I'm even like able to share with that, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyways. I've been working with we've been working a ton with partners too on custom integrations. So that's just a big shout out for custom integrations. If you don't see a direct integration that we currently support, obviously, we have CSV imports, but come talk to us. We want to fast track these integrations, meaning that if you're willing to work with us, we will build again those integrations, albeit if that kind of makes the most sense for us, right? So things like DNH Cloud Marketplace, we already have a custom integration ready to go. So if you want to fast track and at least get this in play, so you can sync in that usage directly from DNH Cloud Marketplace, we have that. We're working through things like Trend Micro and Kaseya VSA X, and like heck, we even had a partner of ours create a Kaseya VSA 9 integration, custom integration. So these things are happening behind the scenes. So come talk to us. Like, it's worth having those conversations. We're all about automation with oversight. We want to automate and synchronize that usage in for you automatically, so you're not having to upload that by any means. So real integrations, real power of integrations, that's what we're all about. So that's the good news coming very, very soon. So
that's brilliant. So just as we wrap up there, Bryan, a fun fact for those listening is the Gradient team is a largely Canadian team. So as things are chilling out down there outside, it's nice and cold and snowy, our team is heating up here on the inside. We're just getting going, releasing all these new features and getting things going. So thank you everyone for tuning in to Between Two Feathers, a not too serious interview series talking about some pretty important stuff. Until next time.
Thank you. Bye.